All right, we back. Broly and Invincible, episode 11. Mark finds out the truth about Broly, so let's get into it. The world tilted on its axis for Eve. Her jaw went slack. The Pentagon, Cecil, the generals had all faded into a muffled roar. Omni-Man, the invincible pillar of the planet, Mark's father, Debbie's husband, the foundation of everything crumbled to dust, leaving a yawning, terrifying chasm. He what? Eve finally breathed, the words barely audible. Cecil's gaze was granted. Every word is true. We have biometric data, trauma patterns from Immortal's resurrection, and a witness account that leaves no room for any doubts. The single greatest hero on our earth is a mass murderer who has been living a lie for decades. Eve's mind, reeling, snapped back to the roadside, to Cecil's frantic specific orders. That's why you pulled me away. That's why you said alone. It was a necessary precaution, Cecil stated, his voice low and grave. He gestured to the holographic schematics of the city, of the Grayson house. We are facing two potential existential threats. Not one. The first is Omni-Man himself, of course. The second is the catastrophic, uncontrolled response to this revelation. He turned fully to her, his eyes boring into hers. I couldn't risk telling Mark. Not yet, at least. We have no idea if he's been complicit this whole time, raised up in this ideology, or if he's simply a pawn who will side with his father out of familial loyalty when confronted. Bringing him here would have been tipping our hand to the enemy. We need to assess the plan and contain Nolan first. And Broly? Eve asked, though a cold dread was already coiling in her stomach knowing the answer. Broly is the reason I demanded you come alone, Cecil said, the words heavy in grim finality. Think about this, Eve. Think about what you know of him. His entire existence here has been defined by two things: his bond with the Graysons and the traumatic disappearance of his guardian, Beats. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the hollow table. In Broly's mind, Beats was a hero, a father figure who possibly died a noble death in a tragic, unexplained massacre. That the man who has shared his dinner table, who has offered him paternal advice, who is his best friend's dad, is the one that murdered Beats. He didn't just kill the Guardians. He executed Broly's last link to his home, to his people, and to his past. Caesar's expression was one of a stark, terrifying clarity. Look, if Broly had come in here with you, and I had delivered this news, what do you think would have happened? The careful control you've helped him build, the fragile peace that he's found, it would have been vaporized in an instant. The rage that consumed him against Battle Beast would be a flicker compared to the inferno of that betrayal. He wouldn't be a hero seeking justice. He would become a force of pure, mindless vengeance. He would confront Omni-Man. He would try to erase him from existence, and the entire city with it. Perhaps the entire continent would be the collateral damage of that fight. Hell, perhaps the entire world. He let the horrific image hang in the air for a moment. I cannot allow a walking apocalypse to be triggered by the worst possible news at the worst possible time in the middle of my command center. Our only hope of surviving these next hours is to deal with Omni-Man with precision and discretion. Throwing an enraged berserk Saiyan at him is the opposite of that. It's a guarantee of a planetary scale devastation as a result. Cecil's voice softened just a fraction, laced with a respect for the fallen. Look, Beats was a good man. He deserved a better end. But avenging him by unleashing Broly wouldn't be justice. It'd be the end of our damn world. And my job, Eve, is to prevent that at all costs. Immortal took a shuddering step forward, his body still vibrating with the aftershocks of his resurrection and the raw, screaming truth. We're not waiting. We're gonna drop on that bastard now. His voice was a gravelly tremor, each word sharpened by centuries of life and a few weeks of hellish death. The only reason he slaughtered us so easily is because he took us by surprise. He exploited our trust and our comradeship. He spat the word like a curse. This time, it'll be different. This time he sees us coming. Eve's mind still reeling, calculating the odds with a cold, sinking feeling. Immortal, I don't think we can win this battle with just the two of us. He took down the entire original team. A grim, mirthless smile touched Immortal's lips, the first expression on his face that wasn't pure rage or anguish. It was a smile of a general who has already moved his pieces into place. Who said it was just the two of us? He gestured with his chin for her to turn around. Eve slowly pivoted, her eyes scanning the back of the vast command center where shadows pulled between the humming server racks. Figures began to step forward, emerging from the gloom like ghosts answering a war drum. First was Monster Girl, her human form looking small and fragile, but her eyes burned with a feral determination. She moved with a slight stiffness, which was a reminder to the grievous wound that she had received from Broly. But now it was mostly healed. But it left a noticeable scar behind. Hold on. And a psychological scar as well. She was here for redemption, to prove her strength against the ultimate betrayer in this instance. Then Robot. His armor was freshly polished, but a new, more powerful chassis was visible beneath the plates, a silent upgrade born from the humiliation of his defeat. His optical sensors glowed with a cold, analytical fury. For him, this was a logical imperative. A flawed, unpredictable variable needed to be erased from the equation for the greater good. Then there was Rexplode. He leaned against a console with his arms crossed, trying to look nonchalant, but failing to hide the tense set of his jaw. He was here because the alternative was admitting the world was ending, and his brand of explosive arrogance was the only shield that he had left. Dozens of duplicates stood in a silent, unfilled phalanx, their identical faces set in a grim resolve. They had felt the deaths of their copies at the hands of the Flaxens and other threats. This was a chance to strike back at the source of the chaos that had plagued them since the Guardians fell. Black Samson stood tall, his military posture ramrod straight. The bandages were gone, replaced by a new, more advanced exosuit that hummed with even more latent power. For him, this was duty, plain and simple. The chain of command had been shattered by the ultimate insider threat, and he was here to help reforge it. And most surprisingly, though, however, hulking and silent in the corner was Titan, the casino crime lord, now casino crime lord since the machine head fall. Looked out of place amidst the GDA regalia, his rock-like skin seeming to absorb the light. He gave a single slow nod to Eve. He wasn't here for justice or glory. He was here because Cecil had offered him a deal. Help save the world, and his record would be expunged. It was this kind of pragmatic, messy alliance that defined the new world. Eve looked at his patchwork army. The wounded, the upgraded, the desperate, and the drafted. It wasn't the pristine, iconic team from the posters. It was something harder, angrier, and born from loss and betrayal. They were all that stood between Earth and a guy with godlike powers who had already proven he would kill them all without a moment's notice, considering he did that to the original Guardians. Immortal's voice cut through her thoughts, low and deadly. He won't be expecting this. He thinks he's already won. He's about to learn that I don't stay dead, and we won't forgive him. The SUV door clicked shut, sealing Amber inside. Mark leaned against the window frame, the evening air cool after the tense car ride home. The silence left by Broly's abrupt departure was a presence in of itself. He just took off, Amber said, her voice laced with concern as she peered through the glass. Is he going to be okay? Mark followed her gaze to the empty sky where his friend had vanished. He let out a long, weary breath. Yeah, I think so. Or at least this is part of him getting there. He shoved his hands in his pockets, his expression a mix of understanding and frustration. Look, he was locked in that room for weeks, Amber. It wasn't just about being sad. It was like he was putting himself in a cage willingly. Every time he looked at me, or my mom, or even the damn backyard, I think he just saw everything he could accidentally break, destroy. He kicked out a loose piece of gravel on the driveway. What Eve said to him back there, it was the first time anyone's offered him a way out that didn't involve putting on a costume and punching at something. It freaked him out, but in a good way, I think. So when he flew off, he wasn't running away from us. Not this time. Mark finally looked at Amber, a small, hopeful smile touching his lips. He's running towards something, or at least he's trying to figure out what that something is. And he can't do that cooped up in my guest room or following us on a college tour. He needs to just be for a little while. To breathe without feeling like the whole world is watching, waiting for him to screw up. He tapped the roof of the car twice, a signal of farewell. He'll be back. He just needs to remember what it's like to be alone with his thoughts without all the guilt. It's the first step to coming home for real. But even as he said it, Mark's eyes betrayed a flicker of his own unease, hoping his faith in his friend wasn't about to be shattered by the unfolding, unseen crisis that was to come. Broly stood on the windswept rooftop, the same one where a shattered Adam Eve had found him after his return from the Flaxen hellscape. The city sprawled before him, a tapestry of light and life, but his gaze was turned inward, fixed on the churning landscape of his own mind. Eve's offer was a seed planted in the barren soil of his self-loathing, and it was now stubbornly trying to sprout. Could it be true? The question was a tremor in his soul. Could these hands, which had crushed an alien war machine and shattered mountains in fits of blind rage, truly be used to cradle something instead of breaking it? He envisioned the scenario she had painted, diverting a lava flow not with cataclysmic blast but with the patient, precise movement of the earth, lifting a collapsed building with the delicate care of a surgeon to reach survivors. It was a language of power he had never been taught. Beats had taught him to fight, to survive. Paragus had taught him to fear his own strength. Eve was offering a dictionary for a dialect that he never even knew existed. But the hope was a fragile thing, immediately besieged by the ghost of his failures. The memory of the flaxen world, a silent red monument to his lack of control, rose up like a specter. The feeling of his mind being submerged in that green roaring static was a constant threat. What if, in the middle of trying to carve a new riverbed, a sudden noise, a moment of stress caused that control to slip? He wouldn't just fail, he would become the disaster he was trying to prevent. The fear was a chain, heavy and familiar, pulling him back toward the safety of isolation. And then there was Cecil. Cecil's interruption. This timing was too perfect, too deliberate. A global priority, he had said, that required Eve's unique mind, but explicitly excluded her two most powerful allies. The directive for Mark to go home was one thing, but the specific order for him to stay away was a message as clear as a warning siren. You are a variable I cannot predict. He understood the logic. He had just proven his, volatility to the entire world a couple weeks ago. But the coincidence gnawed at him. Was this truly a crisis that only Eve could handle? Or was it a pretext to keep him, the blunt instrument, away from something? Some type of revelation, perhaps. The trust he was tentatively placing in his new path felt suddenly precarious, threatened by the shadows of secrets and the cold calculus of a man like Cecil Stedman. He was left on that rooftop, suspended between a terrifyingly beautiful future and the crushing weight of his own past, wondering if the door Eve had opened would be slammed shut by forces far beyond his control sooner than he thought. The next scene opens with a moment of perfect domestic calm. The Grayson living room is warm and bathed in the soft glow of the table lamp. Debbie is smiling, listening to Mark animatedly recount a funny story from his college tour with Amber and William. Nolan sits in his armchair, the picture of paternal contentment, a faint approving smile on his face as he watches his son. The air is filled with simple, easy comfort of a family sharing their day. It's a fragile bubble of normalcy, one they've all clung to desperately in the wake of so much chaos in their recent lives. The sharp, insistent chime of the doorbell is a discordant note, an intrusion from the world outside their bubble. Debbie, ever the hospitable heart of the home, set her half-finished glass of water on the coffee table. I'll get it, she says, her voice light, expecting a neighbor or a delivery or something. Or maybe Amber forgot something. She opens the door, a casual greeting on her lips that dies instantly, frozen in her throat. The porch light illuminates The figure standing there, and Debbie's mind short circuits. It's a face she's seen 1,000 times on the news broadcasts and memorial plaques. A face she and the entire world had mourned. It it was impossible. Immortal stands on her welcome mat, back from the grave. He was in his heroic garb, and it made his presence feel more real. He is utterly still, but energy radiates from him like heat from a furnace, a palpable seismic rage held in check only by a mere thread. His eyes wide and burning. They weren't looking for her. They were fixed on a point that could be past her, into the heart of her home, maybe into her living room. The world seems to slow down as Debbie's hand, which had been resting on the doorframe, goes limp. The glass of water she didn't even realize she was still holding slips from her numb thumbs and shatters on the hardwood floor with a sound that was like a gunshot, a constellation of glass and water exploding at her feet. She doesn't even flinch, though. Her breath hitches, a small pathetic sound. You're... Immortal's gaze doesn't waver. From the interior of the house, his voice, when it comes, is a low, gravelly tremor that seems to vibrate through the very foundation of the home. It is the voice of a man who has screamed himself hoarse in the darkness of death. Debbie, he says her name in accusation. Get your husband. Get your son. Bring them outside. Now. The command is absolute, leaving no room for question or refusal. It's the voice of a general, not a guest. A cold dread colder than the water that was seeping into her socks gripped Debbie's heart. She turns, her movements robotic, and walks back into the warm, well-lit living room, leaving the door open, leaving the avenging hero waiting on her porch. The tranquil evening was over. The tranquil air on the quiet suburban street was shattered not by a sound but by a presence. As Mark and Nolan stepped onto the porch, the sight that greeted them was one from a nightmare. Immortal stood on their lawn, back from the dead, his form radiating a hatred so pure it felt almost like a physical force. The porch light glinted off his costume, making the impossible reality all the more stark. His eyes, wide and burning with the centuries of bottled fury, were locked not on Mark, but on Nolan. They were the eyes of a man who had spent weeks trapped in the silent, screaming hell of the afterlife, replaying his own murder on an endless loop. Mark's brain stuttered, trying to process the apparition. Immortal? But you're... How? Immortal ignored him completely. His voice a low, gravelly tremor that promised violence. It was directed solely at the man standing calmly beside his own son. So, he snarled, the word dripping with contempt. Do you want to do this here? In front of your boy? In front of your wife? Or do you want to find somewhere quiet, you traitorous bastard? Mark flinched, his head whipping towards his father. Dad? What is he talking about? What's going on? Nolan's face was a mask of weary resignation, a performance perfected over decades. He placed a firm, steadying hand on Mark's shoulder, a gesture meant to convey calm control. He let out a long, heavy sigh. The sigh of a burdened man, not a cornered killer. Mark, Nolan said, his voice decrepitly soft. This is complicated. It's time you know the truth, and where you should stand. He looked from Mark's bewildered face back to Immortal's seething form. But he's right. This isn't a conversation for our home. For your mother's sake, let's take it somewhere else. His grip on Mark's shoulder tightened slightly, a paternal anchor in a suddenly unmoored world. Come with me. Come with me. I'll explain everything. I will tell you the truth, but not here. Let's go somewhere so we can talk. He met Immortal's glare with a chilling calm. Somewhere private. The unspoken threat in the air was no longer just from the resurrected hero on the lawn, but from the father that was promising answers. The world was a canvas of black velvet and diamond chips. They stood on a barren, wind-scored peak high above the tree line, the lights of the city a distant shimmering smear in the valley below. The air was thin and bitingly cold. It was a place of absolutes, chosen for a conversation that would probably decide the fate of this world. An immortal stood apart, a statue of vengeance, his arms crossed. His presence was a silent, screaming accusation. He had led them here, a grim shepherd to the slaughter of Mark's innocence. Nolan faced his son, his back to the abyss. Mark stood before him, confused, scared, but still trusting, still looking to his father for an explanation that would make this nightmare make sense. "Dad," Mark began, his voice small against the vastness of the night. "What's going on? Why is he saying those things? Just tell me he's wrong. Tell me it's a mistake, or maybe he's confused from being brought back." Nolan's expression was unreadable, a mixture of pity and a profound, unsettling calm. "It's no mistake, Mark." He took a slow step forward. "What I did for a reason, a purpose, so much larger than you can possibly understand." "What reason?" Mark's voice cracked. "What purpose could there be for killing them? They were your friends. Beats was Broly's. They were livestock." The roar erupted from Nolan, not with rage, but with a shocking, dismissive finality. The word livestock echoed off the mountain faces, brutal and alien. Mark physically recoiled as if he was struck. Nolan's voice returned to its measured, lecturing tone as if explaining a simple, unpleasant fact of nature. "This planet, Mark, these people, they are not what you think they are. We did not come here to play hero. We came here to take over." Mark's mind reeled. "We? Take over? What the hell are you talking about?" "Viltrum," Nolan stated, the name dropping like a lead weight. "Our home, our empire. It is the greatest force for order in the universe. But to maintain that order, to thrive, we need worlds like this one, primed and utterly defenseless for efficient takeover." He gestured to the distant city lights. "My purpose here was never to be a hero. It was to assess, to integrate, and to soften this world for the inevitable, to eliminate any potential threats that could challenge Viltrumite rule. The Guardians were a big threat. A significant one, I should say. They had to be removed. Efficiently." The pieces were crashing together in Mark's mind, each one a shard of glass. The massacre, the betrayal, the lies, every bedtime story, every proud smile, every lesson. All of it was a lie. His life was a lie. You're a monster," Mark whispered, the words tasting like ash. Nolan's face hardened. "I am a patriot. I am your father. And you, Mark, are not human. You are a Viltrumite. Your blood, your strength, your destiny, it is all tied to our empire. These people," he scoffed, "their lives are fleeting, insignificant. In 100 years, you will watch everyone you know turn to dust. Debbie, Amber, hell, even Broly. They are mayflies. We will outlive them all by thousands of years." He extended a hand, his expression shifting to one of genuine, terrifying persuasion. "Join me, Mark. Stop thinking like a child. Stop protecting these farm animals. This world will be ours. It is our birthright. Together we can guide it, rule it, and bring it into the glorious light of the Viltrumite Empire. This is the truth I have been prepping you for." The new Guardians lay close by Immortal's location. In a tomb of horrified silence, every word from the mountaintop was crystal clear, transmitted through a microscopic relay in Immortal's costume. The holographic display showed Nolan's face calm and convincing as he laid out his genocidal manifesto. Cecil Stedman stood motionless inside the Pentagon, his face a granite mask. He had suspected, he had theorized, but hearing it, the cold, utter contempt in Omni-Man's voice, was a psychic wound, man. Around him, the newly assembled team watched, the reactions a spectrum of shock and fury. Rex Splode had lost all his bravado. He was pale, gripping the back of a chair for support. "Holy shit," he breathed over and over. "He really did it. He's a space Nazi." In her human form, Monster Girl had her hands clamped over her mouth, her eyes wide, not just with fear, but with a visceral memory of her own near death at the casino. This was the man who had inspired her to be a hero. Or this is the man who had inspired many to be a hero. Duplicates many bodies all stood perfectly still, a unified front of a stunned betrayal. Black Samplin simply bowed his head, the military man in him acknowledging the scale of the intelligence failure. the personal one mourning a comrade who had never really existed. Titan watched with a grim practical understanding. This was a power play on a cosmic scale, and he was now struck in the middle of it. Robot's analysis was swift and chilling, his voice synthesized and calm, cut through the tension. The strategic implications are catastrophic. A single Viltrumite has pacified our planet. For decades, the threat of a full-scale invasion is now our primary operational parameter. Invincible is the key variable. His alignment will determine the immediate outcome of this confrontation. But it was Adam Eve who felt the ground fall away most completely. She wasn't just hearing the confession of a mass murderer. She was hearing the man who had murdered Beats. And to the point where there was nothing even left of Beats for them to see, nothing left to bury. They still don't know what the hell happened to him. The gentle off-key singing of the man who was the first man to take a chance on Broly by bringing him off Monster Island was snuffed out by this murderer. Her mind flew to Broly, alone on that rooftop, wrestling with his demons, completely unaware that the architect of his greatest trauma was the same man who had just days ago placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. If he heard this, Cecil's warning echoed in her mind. It wouldn't even be a fight. It would be an extinction-level event, born of heartbreak and pure rage. The hopeful future she had painted for him on the roadside was being systematically disintegrated by the man who had taken his first father figure away. On the screen, Mark's face was a contorted mask of grief and denial. "Our birthright," he screamed, his voice raw and breaking. "You killed people. Heroes. You're a murderer." Nolan's expression finally showed a flicker of impatience. "Mark, you're not seeing the big picture." "The hell I'm not." The transmission ended, not with a click, but with the sound of a sonic boom and a shattering rock as Mark, in a surge of furious, heartbroken power, launched himself at his father. The screen in the command center fizzed to static. The silence that followed was heavier than any before. The truth was out. The war for Earth had begun, and their only hope, the traumatized and enraged teenage Viltrumite, was now facing down his father, the most powerful being on the planet, possibly, with the shattered pieces of his world lying at his feet. All right, man, we're heating up, man. Next episode, we're getting. Next episode will be, Omni-Man fighting the Guardians. We have 3 episodes left, man. It's heating up. Y'all know the drill. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, all that. Super chats available, memberships available. Everything that's given is appreciated. And yeah, man, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.